Hello, welcome to the Product Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Sean O'Shea, and today for the show, I'm joined by Flo. Flo is the VP of Data Science and Engineering at Fandom, which is the world's largest entertainment and gaming fan platform. He's a leader in data science, helping to define the global data vision across, while also scaling and managing the data science engineering department. Flo, welcome to the show today. How's everything going?
Thank you so much, Sean. Happy to be here with you today. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great having you. I'd love for you to just tell a little about yourself and what you're doing day to day now.
Yeah, so currently I'm VP of Data at Fandom. So I'm managing data engineering, machine learning, engineering, and data science. Before that, I was at Ubisoft, a video game company, for more than 8 years. The first 3 years onward, I was part of the Ubisoft think tank, which is a very small team. It was 8 to 10 people at the time. And our only client was the CEO of the company. After 3 successful years there, I met the VP of marketing at a corporate dinner. She was based in San Francisco, and I was a bit cheeky at the time. So I told her, "Oh, you are in San Francisco. You don't have a data science team. Can I build one for you?" And it worked. 6 months later, my contract, my visa, and I moved abroad with family. At the beginning, I was thinking I was going to stay just a couple of years for my kids to get the proper English. As you can see, still not lost my French accent, still sexy, but it is what it is. And the bet is done now. So we have spent more than 2 years. Actually, we are in now close to 7 years in the US. And when I moved at the beginning, it was in the marketing department. I did not know anything about marketing. My manager, the VP of marketing, did not know a lot about machine learning. She was very good with number, but didn't know so much about machine learning. So it was funny. We still made it work, and we built the team. Actually, full department, data science department, over the course of 5 years, and we go from 2 to a bit more than 20, and it was still continuing to grow when I moved to Fandom from Ubisoft. It was a lot of how we are talking with users, how we are communicating with them, so either for acquisition or either for engagement. Typically, from a data science perspective, you can think about lifetime value, recommendation system, audience segmentation. And then I moved to Fandom, replicating the same success. So Fandom is an interesting company. It's one of the biggest company in terms of volumes of users. We have 350 million monthly active users. It's not completely known because it's inherited, and it's so each wikis correspond at its own signature. So for instance, when you are going to Star Wars, you may not know that you are going to Fandom. And what is interesting with Fandom, it's inherited the philosophy of data at the beginning from Wikipedia, because Fandom is a spin-off of Wikipedia. It was created in 2004 by Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, to host information about fan elements. Typically, all secondary and tertiary character of Harry Potter is interesting for fans, but maybe not for the common people that are going to Wikipedia. And now it has grown over the years. And to give you an example, our biggest wiki, so Wikipedia, which is the Star Wars wiki, has now 180,000 pages. So every single characters, weapons, battleship, and so on have their own pages, which is represent a huge volume, even from what was before the movies. So the characters that were in the books pre-1977. And at Fandom, I'm replicating the same success at Ubisoft. So building a data science team. I also inherited a data engineering team that was 3 people at the time, and now it's growing. creating a machine learning engineering team too. So we are about 19, and we are still going to continue to grow in the next years.
It's amazing. Building teams is it's very complicated, and especially doing it yourself. How was that experience? I guess at both organizations.
So it's complicated indeed, but it's something I very enjoy. I think it's where I'm probably at my best from an impact standpoint. And there is a couple of elements. There is understanding what you are going to do. What are the different areas where you will get an impact? And then there is hiring people to feel this impact and to be able to provide here. And I think we can talk a lot about recruitment, especially in the data space. There is different data profile. There is like a lot of people haven't heard about data science, but there is no real meaning about data science. Like there is not something like say, this is exactly what is data science. And it's funny, like when I'm interviewing people, the first thing I ask them, or like one of the first things is, what is your definition of data science? And in the space of like 8-9 years now, so I'm asking this question. Nobody came up with the exact same answers. I can build clusters of answers that are more or less similar, but nobody came with the exact same one. It really depends, and there is a lot of spectrum. How I like to define it is about it's a continuum that I'm using with 5 different steps. So when I'm building, like I like to focus on the product side of data science, what make me come here today. And it's really about when you think about a product, you first need to start with why. Why I'm doing it, what will be the impact of it, why people will be interested in it, and why, as a data person, I'm going to do. Step 2 is about the analytical phase. So understanding the different data points that we have, collecting them, and finding actionable data points. So finding insights. Step 3 is about building a prototype and testing it. To give you an example, when I was at Ubisoft, the CRM manager came to me and said, hey, Flo, can I get the churn score for one of our games? I say, yes, what do you mean by a churn score? And so we iterated there, and what I understood is they were looking to contact and reach players who are still playing the game, but were likely to not be there anymore in 2 weeks. Because when a player is inside the game, they have a way to contact them. There is like between matches, between like when they download, when they open the game, when they close it, they have contact points with players. So it's really important for them to be able to contact them at this point. And once they're outside of the game, it's way more complex because you can only contact them by email. Like many people don't read their email or like go directly to spam. Or many people, like you can reach them with media, but it's very expensive and not very targeted. So here we went to step 2 and say like, what does it mean to be a churner in this specific game? So this is a game like we call live game that is as continue that are like players are continuing to play every single day. It's not like you finish it in a 60-hour and then you go to the next game. So like here it's a competitive game that you can play forever. And what we saw very quickly is that if a user plays just once or twice in the space of 14 days, you are way more likely to churn than if you played 3 times or more. And it comes back a bit to creating a habit. Once you have played multiple times, you start seeing and say, like, it's a bit like going to the gym. When if you are sticking to your routine, you are more likely to stick to your fitness routine. And it's exactly the same with competitive video game. If you are playing just one here and then, like, you're way more likely to drop and go to the next game or stop playing video game at all. And so we deliver that as a first model, model in quote, because it's not like a very scientific machine learning model. But it has two big advantages. The first advantage is we were able to give a model in the space of a couple of days. And so the CRM team were able to start working on it and testing and so on. And the other advantage, it gives them an idea of what a potential churner looks like. And no, you don't have 5 days to build your FOMO campaign. You need to be very quick and very precise when you are giving a message. You need to engage them right away. You don't have time. And so we did some tests. And so it's where we are in this phase 3, where we are iterating on the prototype. So we did some tests with, instead of 14 days of time horizon, we look at 7 days, 10 days, 8 days, and so on. And also, by the time we did that, we had time to build an actual churn score using standard machine learning libraries. About a month later, everybody was happy. And we went in step 4, that is the beginning of the industrialization. And there is two things in terms of industrialization. There is automation, that is making sure that your score and short score is computed on a daily basis. But also there is a question around optimization. And optimization from a machine learning standpoint, you can think in two ways. You can think optimizing the precision, and so optimizing the number of false positive and false negative, but also, and more importantly in this specific case, is optimizing the compute. When you are running a code for 20, 25 million users, you cannot do it on your laptop anymore. Like, you have to actually scale it. And so in this case, we build the code directly in a cloud environment. The last step is about maintenance and availability. So what you want to make sure is you are going, like, it's actually usable. It's not just to say, like, oh, I've done a great model and it's available on my database, like, but it's also to make it available to the end users. And so in this specific scenario, we built an API and it was available for the CRM manager directly in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. There is a question around maintenance also, is to make sure that we have one score that is computed that will stay. And so if we are seeing the code diverge over time, we need to retrain or to build a retrain model or retrain the model at regular interval. So kind of my way to think about data science is these 5 steps. And now, like, if you go and you think about what a data analyst is, a data analyst is step 1 and step 2. It's really focusing on the why and also on the analytic and insight aspects. A data scientist is going one step further and is going to build all the prototype and that are trying to move, like trying to work directly with the business partners and build those prototypes that will deliver value, in addition of delivering value of insights. When you think about a data engineer, you are going to think about step 4 and step 5. So it's a question of automation and a question around maintenance and availability, so building those API. Machine learning engineer are focusing mostly on the step 4, that is the optimization, both from a compute perspective and from a performance perspective. And then you get different flavor on top of it. Like, you get, for instance, data strategists, which are people that have a computer science background, a data background, statistic background, and so on, that are able to do queries, but it's not their main purpose. Their main purpose is about discussing with business owners and like product owners, and really like making sense of all the requests together. And the last piece is more like machine learning ops. And here it's really focusing on the last step, that is like this availability and the maintenance. So once again, to answer your question, what is data science? There is no clear answer about it. I have built one framework around it that helped me to say like, what is the data science? What is the data engineering for me and for my team? Other company may use a different definition. Was that, for instance, the data science may tends more toward machine learning or toward more data analysis. And now if we come back to the other part of the question, that was how do we hire for that? It's once we have built this framework, we say, now I want to hire a data scientist. So I'm going to focus and have 3 different interviews. One that is about, like actually 4 different interviews. One that is discussing with the product manager and like how good they are at communicating there. Second element is analytics, and here it's interviewed by the data analyst to better understand their ability to interpret numbers. Step 3 is about like their understanding of data science principle and machine learning principle in general. And the last steps is about an interview with data engineers, as they will have to handle over their code from data scientist to data engineer. I want to make sure there is good communication, but also that their code will be not as good as what the data engineer or machine learning engineer can produce, but at least good enough that they can understand. And finally is the industrialization part. And now if you want to go even one step further, like you when you are building a team, you, at least for the first few reports that you will get, you want to have like people that are very jack of all trade. But as you get more people, you will see your teams that are that have some area where they are better and so on. Typically, like maybe you are very strong on the prototyping phase, or you may have very strong on the analytical phase, and your team may be lacking in terms of business understanding. And so your next hires that you will do, you will focus more on this aspect and saying like, I want to better understand and make sure that I have someone that can communicate. Typically, the case of my team was already 5 or 6 team members, and we were really missing on the media understanding. So first requirement for the talent acquisition team, but also a huge area of focus for us during the interview was, how does this person communicate with media managers?
Makes sense. There's a lot to it, and you really broke it down in a great manner. It's really interesting how and good how much you're really truly focusing on the end product, and like everything you're doing is really to make informed decisions to better the product, which is awesome. And the use case of it's almost like a pre-win-back campaign, which is like I don't even know what to call exactly what you just described, because not many companies are doing it. They're doing it once people unsubscribe or drop off, and then they're doing some type of win-back campaign. Then you're a step ahead in terms of figuring out who is going to drop off before they even do, which is amazing. There's a lot
it's definitely preventive churn. And it's like it's really come back of where we have the most impact, and here we can have a great impact on the user, because we can communicate with them. Once they are out, like it's very difficult to communicate with them.
Oh, for sure. Like just from like my experience in the like more of the web and mobile space, it's once they're out, it's either push notifications, email, text messaging, like. and you never know if they're going to respond. So you got to get them while they're inside your experience, which is amazing. I didn't realize Fandom was a spin out of Wikipedia. That was interesting to hear. Like I've used your platform, but I didn't know it came from Wikipedia. So it was the same founder.
Yeah, it was Jimmy Wales founded both Wikipedia and Fandom, which was Wikia when he started it. He has other co-founders, of course, for both of them. But yeah, like it's the same inheritance at the beginning.
Interesting. I guess getting back to more the data science side, what types of tooling do you use? What methods do you use for collecting data? What does that look like?
So that's an interesting question. There is multiple ways to collect data. There is one that is purely based on trackers. So it's what people are doing, like on Fandom. So for instance, when you are going to a page to another, when you are clicking on some element, it's information that is tracked. So we have an event that is sent to our warehousing environments that then we can treat and gather and manipulate to highlight specific information. There is other elements. Typically, it's surveys that you can ask, and you can cross this information between like this specific user has done this specific action. And like as my original background is in algorithmics. So at the beginning, I was a bit skeptical of like, oh, this is just qualitative information. And in 2014, something like this, at Ubisoft, we really got a huge breakthrough by mixing the approach between the quantitative aspect of the trackers and the qualitative aspects of the survey. Even if the survey at the scale we are running them are not purely qualitative anymore. When you have 5,000, 50,000 respondents, like you can say like I have good information. Yes, it will be information based on like the feeling of users, but it will be still accurate information. And so to give you an idea of like this specific breakthrough that we had, so we're working on Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 at this point. So it was more than 10 years ago, or like nearly 10 years ago. And what we did is we started looking at the behavior of the users. And we were seeing like different clusters, but one cluster very struck out. And it was a cluster of players who were very like not playing the game as it was intended. And it was a big cluster of 42% of the population. And they were like, Assassin's Creed is really about being stealthy, being like going in the back of the guard, not being noticed and so on. And we are seeing this huge group of players that were like very more run and gun, that were like discovered by heavy guard and like killed and coming back and so on. And something like very surprised, not completely surprised the production team, but it's more like the volume of those users that were not playing the game as it was intended. And in parallel, what we did, we ran a survey asking players what are their interests and so on, and playing this specific game. And we saw a huge number of players that say, like, I'm interested in playing, when I'm playing this game, I'm interested in the story and the historical events. And say like, oh, like you are run and gun, but in the meantime, you are interested in historical event. Like it doesn't make sense. Like you cannot be brutish on one side and want to be educated in the other. So it was like something like 85% of the players were interested in the story and the historical event. And when we cross both information, what we saw is this 42% group of users were all interested in the story and the historical events. So it's like, oh, it doesn't even make less sense. And we saw also like it was their main driver to the satisfaction by a huge margin. And so we started to think back and say, like, now my motivation when I'm playing Assassin's Creed is about knowing more about the story and the historical events, less so much about like the game mechanics. So if your motivation is that, what will be your behavior? And your behavior will be to go from point A to point B, that is the end of the mission. So start to finish. And you disregard a bit how to play the game. You are just interested in the story and the historical event. And like this information crossing both like tracking and survey help us to better understand the users and to be able to influence the design of the game and the marketing campaign. So typically from a design perspective, it was to be more open to different play style, to allow people to be more brutish in their approach of the game, or being a sniper, complete opposite. And for the marketing team, it was saying like, you shouldn't care too much about, or like you should at least put less emphasis in the game mechanics, but you should emphasize more toward the embodiment of these characters and what he's going to learn, what is the setting, and so on. And then once you have very set that up, you can go in more detail about the game mechanics for a second layer of users who are also interested in that. But your very first layer is about the interest and the motivation to discover the story and the historical events.
Awesome. It's very like really very interesting how like even a game of that size and magnitude, you found that percentage of users that were using like they weren't using it as we're playing the game in a different way than the intended use. It's very very interesting and amazing that you were able to kind of uncover that. Did you like how often does that happen where you see these major abnormalities like that? Is that consistent across like different products that you've worked on? Like how often does that happen where you see something like that?
I would say it's hard to quantify, like how often people are not using the way it's intended. But I would bet, like as an educated guess, that it happened more often than not. And I think like we have all seen this, for instance, example of like a very specific path on the street and like people just crossing through the grass because it's close, it's shorter. It's not what is intended by the designer at first, but like it is what people are going to do because it's more convenient, because it's their motivation is there. So starting with what motivates people to do, and once again starting with why, may help to build better products.
It really makes perfect sense, and I think you always have to look at the data for what it's giving you, and not try to pigeonhole your product into what you think or how you think people are going to use it, but see how they're actually using it. What type of so in terms of your like the tools that you're using, is it a lot of it homegrown and built yourselves on like your own infrastructure? Is it like custom tools that are like more SaaS products that you're paying for? What does that look like? And if you can name some of them, that'd be great as well.
So there is different elements. Like we are using a lot of Amazon infrastructure, so a lot of AWS for running. So our data gathering, our data manipulation, and finally, like how we are giving that away through microservices. To give you some examples, there is EMR, which is like a very common framework for data gathering and data wrangling. There is EC2 and ECS instances to build the microservices. And then it's a mix of homebrew and things that we are building by ourselves. Like when we see something that is very specific, we want to do it for ourselves, like very specific to the industry. When you say like we cannot do it, and there is already solution in the space that are existing, we are going for it. Typically, one of the last tools that we purchase a licensing for is Anomalo. It's an anomaly detection tool that help us to understand when there is issue from a data gathering perspective. And we selected because it's so first it answers to all or most of our needs from a data quality and data monitoring perspective, but also it's very convenient to set up for non-data people, typically for a product manager or for a sales manager and so on. And they get alert directly in Slack. So if data are not gathered, they get the information and they have a graph that helps them to understand what is happening. It can be like the data are not gathered or there is 10% done, and they can very, very quickly react and understand what is happening. Typically, it can be for a product manager specialized in ads revenue on the site to see that the last update has created, for instance, an issue in terms of performances for video views, and saying like, oh, we had 80% of viewability and we are done 65%. There is something happening right now. So is there an issue in the data, or is there an issue with the last update of the site? And we can monitor that, and they get the information right away directly to them. They don't have to rely on a data analyst doing the analysis like 10 days later, because the finance guy come back to them and say like, hey, we are losing revenue. What is happening?
It sounds like you have a lot of automations that are all as close to real time as possible, which is great. And that's like, you can solve any fire as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's not like we are not on the real time, meaning like you get information in the next seconds. But we have multiple batches coming in with delay of a couple of hours up to a day, which is like you can monitor a lot in this time frame.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially if you're a day could be probably millions of dollars difference for you, or
yeah, definitely
in terms of revenue or losing potential customers by an issue. It's I think every second, minute, hour counts. How do, like in terms of the actual like raw data itself, dealing with like hundreds of millions of users, is it easier dealing with more data like of that magnitude, or is it harder? Like, can you walk through that a bit more?
Yeah, so there is things that are harder to do. Of course, just the sheer volume of it makes sometimes like complicated, and say like you need to think about scale a lot. One example I like is today we are categorizing a page, so an article based on our taxonomy. And we are able to say like this page is about a book, TV series, a movie. When it's about video games, we can go deeper and say like this was released by this publisher or this one. We can say the genre is action adventure, open world, and so on. And if we are just taking 1 second to categorize an article, which 1 second doesn't seem long, when you have 40 million articles as us, it takes more than a year to classify everything. which is like not reasonable. So you want it to be at top couple of hours. And so just thinking about scale and thinking about how fast you need to go is important. Now, like what is easier to do? It's typically question of A/B testing. When you say like, oh, for doing an A/B testing for this feature on the site, I need 80,000 people. 80,000 people, you have it in like 5-10 minutes, which makes testing way easier than many companies. Like, what is 50,000 people or 80,000 people? It takes like a week, 2 weeks sometimes. So like this scale allows us to be able to run more tests and be more precise when we are running tests.
Makes sense. I think you have the volume, so being able to do a test that quickly is it's amazing in some aspects where you can get that many. They can hit like whatever variant in the matter of minutes. You can get 80 to 100,000 plus data points in terms of the right direction. It's very, very crazy. In terms of the data too, so now dealing with like CCPA, GDPR, how does that affect your day-to-day life in terms of what data you can leverage? Has anything changed over the past couple of years in terms of just privacy in general? Like, even if you can do something, do you guys not do it to just be really as secure and private as possible in terms of using any sensitive data that's your customer data, I guess?
Yeah, so of course, like security, even if it was not just a legal reason, we will do it. Like especially people at Fandom are very so pro liberty and pro users in general. So we are not going to use shady methods to collect data and so on. And so we are following to the later CCPA, GDPR. We are implementing every single laws as soon as possible. For that, we have a legal counsel that is inside Fandom, but we have also external legal teams that are specialized in data that are coming to us with the information about, hey, this is coming, you should prepare for it. And so all our data stack is how we are collecting data is very compliant. Also, one thing that helps us is we are not a site that is collecting a lot of personal information by default. So you can, as Wikipedia, you can come without being logged in, at the opposite of other sites that may ask you by default, you cannot go onto it, like many social media, for instance. You can go into it without being logged in. And so that have personal information by default. That's the opposite on our side, we don't. We are still requiring consent to be tracked to the users, and they can opt in or opt out at their will.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that. You don't have as much PII as like a social network, even though you have similar functionalities in terms of like commenting and things of that nature. So that aligns. In terms of like every new project that you have internally, who I guess is the main business driver usually like product managers, or does it come from you guys sometimes? And in terms of like, this is a new idea that we could help inform whatever team internally it is?
Yes, so there is different, like we have product managers, we have stakeholders in the marketing, in the revenue team. And we are working hand in hand with with the product manager that are the central people for whom the different products are developed. And ideas can come from anywhere, and then they will be prioritized by product manager with stakeholders in function of how long it is and how valuable it is to develop for us. One of the last things that comes a bit from my side, for instance, is image classification. And so to improve and reduce the cost of checking all the images that are coming to Fandom and to ensure user safety and to make sure that an unsafe content is not in front of a child wiki. So we have short SLA right now, but we want to have them even shorter by using machine learning techniques specialized with images.
That's awesome. I guess how real time, like where's that currently? Like how fast does that currently take, and where are you trying to benchmark against? Like what are you trying to get to?
So in this specific scenario, we have like a couple of hours stop for SLA, and it's a huge manual reviews, because it's also like when a user is uploading an unsafe image to Fandom, we want to also take action against this user to make sure that they are not going to repeat this behavior. So sometimes it can be just a warning. You can say like, this was a limit, but sometimes like users are doing it on purpose. It's very rare. Like we have less than, it's not even 100 a day, but it happens. And we want to make sure that we are reviewing these images and taking action against those users. Now, what we want to do with machine learning techniques is reduce this delay of questionable images to nearly zero, and to make sure that you cannot upload an image that have a potential negative impact on the communities. Using machine learning may also help us to think more about what, like to label directly those images, to say there is different filters. For instance, a bit of nudity, not full nudity, but a bit of nudity or a bit of gore elements, or the Game of Thrones wiki, we can expect them. At the opposite, the same content on My Little Pony, like here you have a huge issue, and you want to make sure that these images are not going to children communities.
On the same note, where do you see like the future going in terms of like machine learning and data science in general, I guess, to be able to like do some of these tasks even faster and quicker and be more precise? I guess how is everything advancing to like what is the next level here?
It's hard to say. Like it's a field that is developing so fast. When we took the breakthrough of AlphaGo between the best player of Go about 6 years ago, like it was a crazy moment and a real breakthrough in terms of capacity from the machine to do tasks that were deemed nearly impossible. And we have seen a huge boom in the last years about images. And same thing, like it's a huge amount of information that deep learning techniques and both deep learning techniques and the progress on the hardware side has made possible. We are all thinking about like these recent apps proposing images built only from a couple of words or sentences, saying like, I want to see that, and poof, you have 10 images corresponding to that. And And this is very surprising, to have seen that happening in a short space. In the meantime, there is things that a few years ago we are thinking that it was going to happen. Typically, autonomous cars. I even made a bet with my father-in-law that I lost, that I will be able to go from the East Bay. I'm living in the East Bay to San Francisco, and in an autonomous car. And if we are making it, I am paying a good restaurant. And if it was the opposite, sorry, if we are making it in an autonomous car, he was paying, and the opposite, I was paying. So I guess the next time he's in town, I have to offer the restaurant for him. My deadline was end of 2022. It was a bet made 6 years ago or something. So I lost. It happens.
I would have bet on you at that time as well. About 6 years ago, I thought we would have been there by now. At one point you mentioned is the hardware, and I think that's for me day to day, just seeing how far we've progressed. Where like we're holding a very powerful like computer in your hand at this point with everyone that has an iPhone or high-end Android. It's just amazing. And just to be able to do the amount of processing that you guys need to do with like on AWS or GCP, whatever it may be, it wasn't possible years ago. So I feel like it's I don't know how long like what it's been X number of years that we've been able to do run on GPUs and like really high end where we can output a lot of great findings from the data. Like what is the next 5-10 years going to look like? That's where I'm like, how much more can we optimize a chipset? How much more, like how much faster can we make things? And like, is it quantum computing? Is it going to be what people think it's going to be? Like that's where it's endless. And I think to your point in saying like it's not super clear. I don't know where else we can go from here. I think there's some things where we got so much farther than I thought, and then in terms of like self-driving vehicles, like you said, we're not there yet, but we thought we were going to be. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a very surprising field and constantly and very quickly evolving. The one way when I started 20 years ago, my career, like it's completely different now. And for the better, I would say.
So it's saying you started 20 years ago, what was your inspiration to get into data science, or starting with algorithms? What was your driver? What was your passion there?
So I started with algorithm, and I did that for like more than 8 years. And then I was thinking like, there is something missing. I was kind of a black box optimizing things, first for compilers and for airline companies. And it's a moment where I went back to school, and I got a UX degree in Paris, and it's really where I discovered that actually you can do way more than just being on the optimization aspects of computer science, but you can do all these things around user experience and how you can improve the product. And it's where like between this degree in user experience and my past in terms of computer scientist is really where I discover the middle ground, that is using data to improve product. And when I'm thinking about product and data, there is three main areas. The first area is the very beginning of it is what is a market for it. Understanding the market sizing, how much market share you can get, understanding what are your competitors and so on. The second aspect is about optimizing a product. So it's looking at it and doing A/B tests, understanding the funnel, both acquisition and retention. And the third element that is the less known and the less used, I would say in general, by product manager is using data directly into a product and seeing how data can flow to one side to the others. It's typically like what makes a recommendation system, or the example of the churn models that we use that we talked a bit before. That is how I'm going to power my user experience by using data. We could have stopped at saying like 1 or 2 days, this is potential churner, and so we are thinking about what a marketing campaign for them and how engagement looks like. But by using the data, we are also improving directly and personalizing directly the experience of the users.
Great answer. So it seems like you made a pivot there in your early days. I guess what advice would you give any advice to your younger self, or any major important lesson that you learned across your career?
Yeah, so I will definitely give me that lesson, and it's some lesson I gave to many data scientists in future, like that are just graduating or that are looking for their next career opportunity, or to just personally grow as a data person. And it's always start with why. And it's really think about what is the business topic, what is the business purpose that you are serving. And it was really what was missing to me when I was working in my past, because I was in this black box. I didn't understand what I was doing. And maybe if I understood what I was doing 20 years or 15 years ago, I would have stayed my first job, because it was compiler optimization. And so we are optimizing compilers to make code run faster. What it means is also like you can reduce the CPU usage of a computer to get the exact same results. So by doing a compiler optimization, you get less and less CPU consumption and energy consumption. So by doing that, you have a huge impact on the world. Like actually, GCC is used on nearly all computers. So my impact on energy consumption is maybe very high, but I didn't understand it at the time, and I cannot quantify it now. So always start with why, for yourself, but also to get better at what you do. There is one thing that you can hardly change is your mindset around this starting with why. Some learn it late, some never learn it, some are born with it and are lucky. But it's very hard to change that. At the opposite, you can always learn hard skill like computer science, machine learning science, statistics, and so on. It's something that is easy to learn, like not completely easy, not like everybody will do it, but it's something that you can work on it and learn. The mindset itself of starting with why is more difficult. And it's also the difference between a junior data person and a senior data person. When I look at a resume, for instance, and I see someone that just highlighted the different libraries they used, the different tools they used, I'm going to say like, oh, this person is very focusing on the technical aspect. At the opposite, when I see someone in the resume saying like, by doing that, I have increased the value of the company of $1 million. I have reduced the cost by $500,000. Like I see something in front of me that say like, this person understands what they do beyond just the technical aspect. And so you can trust them to be able to build something that is meaningful in the future. So my main advice to myself 20, 15 years ago and to every single person.
I love that you mentioned the why, and I think that's a big thing that really just comes up in products a lot. And why are we building feature A? What is the root like discovery data that shows that this will be effective? So I think that it really hits home for me. And the second point regarding having just like a laundry list of technology that you used. It's all, once again, it goes full circle. It's all about what the impact of using that technology or tool set or framework, whatever it may be, is actually providing. So that really, it makes sense in my mind. And it's good to really hear you reiterate that for our listeners. So we covered a lot of different topics today. To bring things together, we like to end our episodes with the Majestyk Byte, which is one key takeaway that you'd like to leave our listeners with. Can you share your Majestyk Byte with us today?
So start with why. Once again, I'm repeating on it. Sorry.
Yep.
But also it's like, what I mean by that is make it useful. And also like make it used. It's start with why, but go to the finish line. It's really important to say like, I have seen so many people fail, or so many teams fail because of that, because they potentially started with why, or like worst case scenarios, they didn't even started with it, but they started with why, but they forgot it along the way, and they didn't give something at the end that is used. And so all their work was lost. There is a saying that 80 to 90% of the data science and machine learning work is not used. And it's really due to that. It's not starting with why or losing it along the way.
Awesome. Yeah. I think companies lose it along the way. And that's a big thing. It doesn't matter how big you are. You still have to keep innovating and looking at the data. It's very important. So I love that you brought that up again. Where can our listeners find you, and find more about you, whether it's like on social or your own personal site and your company as well?
Yeah, so the best way to contact myself is on my LinkedIn account. So Florent Blachot. And I'm sure you will give the exact name on your website. And very like, I'm trying to answer to everyone coming to me and asking for questions, especially for younger people. I'm taking calls from time to time to help them and to orient them toward their next step in their career. So do not hesitate to contact me.
Awesome. That's very admirable that you're giving back. That's great. Well, thank you for being on today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Sean. Appreciate being with you today. And have a great day.
Awesome.